Rolling, and there we are.
We're gonna get no music. You're not gonna give me any music.
I asked if you wanted
You're
music.
not
You
gonna
said
give
no
me any
music.
music.
We
You're really
just
not gonna
did.
give me any music.
Then
Oh
I
my
said we're
god!
going live, and then
Welcome to back to season 2 of the Demand Better podcast. I'm your host, Corona, coming to you from the concrete jungle, New York City, and joining me as always is my esteemed co-host, Dr. Bo Babenko, who is in Erie, Colorado. What up, Bo?
what
Jets
up?
Bills tonight, big doggy. Ha ha.
Yes, and we do need to acknowledge 9/11, as Tarek
Yes.
pointed out right before we went live. Our guest, so September 11th, obviously never forget. I know I was right across. I was a freshman in college, Wagner College, right across Staten Island. The first plane woke me up, literally woke me up, and then it was very surreal and obviously a lot of crazy that day. But where were you guys?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
We can't. You can say what you got to say. We ain't introducing you yet. 'Cause we ain't introducing him yet. But where were you, sir?
Yeah. So I was actually in 10th grade down in Greensboro, North Carolina, going to, I think, like English class. And so me being from New York City, but living in North Carolina, like I was that New York kid at school. So, everyone obviously rushed to me when plane hit the towers just to kind of see like, oh, how's your family doing? So, my father lived in New York and stuff like that. And so it was a tough day because I wasn't able to find my father. I wasn't able to reach my father. Wasn't able to reach my brother, my aunt. So it was tough being so far away and not being with my family. But fortunately, my family, we're fine.
And I was doing what I always am doing. I was working somebody out. I saw the planes hit the tower in New York Sports Club at 76th Street, and the woman was doing lunges, and she said to me, "My husband's downtown." I said, "Nah, man, that's Chicago. That's the Twin Towers." And keep walking. And then I turned and I realized what it was, and just all day I'll never forget, man. Never, ever, ever forget. So, other than that, and that's a real tough segue there. Um,
Yeah.
that's a real tough segue. Well, we are sponsored by Fit Care Physiotherapy and Wellness, where the emphasis is to focus on your fitness so you can avoid the healthcare space. Today, we're excited to have a special guest with us, Tarek Kitson. Tarek, a seasoned healthcare leader with a strong commitment to improving community health and wellness. He has 17 years of experience in the healthcare arena and is currently the healthcare administrator at Memorial Sloan Cancer Center. Tarek is also the president co-founder of Active Plus, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the physical, mental, emotional of health of at-risk youth in local communities. Tarek is a passionate advocate for healthy living. He's on a mission to help people demand better health. He's a wealth of knowledge and experience, and we're so excited to have him on today's show to talk all things health, youth, fitness, and wellness. And before we begin this conversation, we got to keep everything transparent. I'm honored and blessed to be the president, presently be the board chair of Active Plus. So without further ado, let's welcome Tarek Kitson to the Demand Better podcast. What's up, my friend?
What's going on, guys? Thank you for having me. I've been checking you out for how long? It's been like 2 years.
Yeah, 2
The
years.
Man Better. Yeah, about 2 years, man. So I'm just proud of you guys. You putting out some good information out there. It's definitely needed because there's a lot of nonsense on the internet and YouTube. So, we need more podcasts and we need more professionals, out there. So I'm happy to be here.
No, listen, I'm so happy you're here. And I want to just jump right into it, man. I seriously want to get into this. I know the whole story, a lot of the story. Why don't you give the listeners, other than what I've given them, the background, how you got here to where we are with Active Plus and what made you start Active Plus and the evolution of it? Because when I joined onto the board, I had no idea of what you were seeing on a regular basis. Let's just talk about Active Plus first, and then we'll talk about the state of youth in general, and then we can go from there. Go ahead, Tarek, all yours.
Yeah, no, thanks, David. Yeah, so I'm originally from New York City. I was an 80s baby, and me and my mother, we moved down to North Carolina when I was 8, like in the mid 90s. And so, came up, middle class, with my elementary, middle school, high school. We always had phys ed teachers, 4 or 5 phys ed teachers. Sports were everywhere. It's very affordable to play sports. Like if you wanted to play sports down south and in North Carolina, you could play, no matter how much money your parents had. I played basketball throughout my childhood. So I ended up playing collegiate basketball upstate New York, went to SUNY Geneseo, which is close to Rochester, New York. After that, came down to the city, just started working and working at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Then got my master's in public health from Columbia University. And so, I've always liked to be hands-on with the things that I do, working at the cancer center, working with breast cancer patients, in my younger years. And so, the next step, I wanted to work more in the community. And, I actually started working with adults. So I was doing like personal training out in Central Park. And, going to Central Park in the summertime, I feel like everyone's trying to be a personal trainer and do group classes. Very saturated in New York City. Everyone calls themselves a personal trainer here. And so I was introduced to a middle school in East Harlem, me and co-founder Miguel Rojas. And she was telling me that her students didn't have phys ed class. They didn't have any sports program. And so, given my background coming from North Carolina, I really didn't believe it. So I needed to check it out myself. And, we would go there every Saturday morning, and it'd be 20 kids every Saturday morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning. They would show up. And I was just so impressed that kids would show up to do like simple exercises, physical activities, but I was still kind of unaware of what the situation was in New York City and in the Department of Education. And so going into the next school year, because that was like springtime, we were really trying to see what we wanted to do with this organization that we started, right? Because we were more so working with adults, but we just wasn't seeing the return. We didn't really enjoy working with adults. And after seeing, the work that we were doing in East Harlem with these students, even though it was a small group of students, we just wanted to continue, just to kind of see it out. And so going into the next year, considering that this school didn't have a sports program, they didn't have anything, which I thought is unbelievable. I felt like any public school in America would have physical education and sports program, especially being in middle school, and also being in a, fairly low class income area. There's a lot of public housing in East Harlem. You would think that they would at least offer some sort of physical activity or some sports to get some of these students off the streets. I mean, that's what you would think. Me and my partner Miguel, we actually put some students into some sports programs outside of the school. It's called Asphalt Green. So we actually put together a football program, a basketball program, a soccer program, and a volleyball program at this school. And after doing that, the doors really opened up for us, and we really saw like what that landscape was in New York City in regards to access to physical activities, access to sports. We were recognized on New York One News. We had a lot more public schools reaching out to us, seeing that if we could provide these services in regards to like sports and recreation. So yeah, man, I was very surprised. I didn't seek out working for kids. Having a sports background, getting my master's in public health. The co-founder, he played collegiate football at Stony Brook. We wanted to be involved with fitness. We wanted to be involved with sports, but we didn't necessarily know how to do that. And, us seeing that it was actually a need within New York City, we've just been kind of going ever since. So yeah, that's a little bit more of the background of how I got introduced to youth fitness in New York City.
No, you know what's interesting about that, your story, is this. Bo was a city kid. Bo went to school in Brooklyn. And Bo, what was your school like when you were growing up, the opportunities you guys had at your school?
Went to Brooklyn.
The differences.
Yeah, Brooklyn Technical High School, downtown Brooklyn. It is ranked one of the top academic schools in the country. We were featured on the New York Times front page for how terrible our football field was. And I was on the football team, but there were a lot of sports. It was a specialized high school. You had to take a test to get in. I know that Bronx Science, Stuyvesant were the other two at the time, and there's plenty of sport opportunities to my knowledge. I think Bronx Science had the least amount of athletes of the three. They were definitely much more focused, and I don't know if that was based on opportunity and safety and geographic kind of availability. But yeah, being in downtown Brooklyn too. Not if you go a few blocks kind of towards Bed-Stuy. If you wandered a little too far that way, it was definitely, we had to walk in packs and things like that. And even going to our practice field, it was not polite. There's not a lot of politeness going on there. But yeah, that was to answer your question. There was definitely, we did have a lot of opportunities. We had a huge space. Anyone who's ever been anywhere near Brooklyn Tech, it's one of the biggest buildings in all of Brooklyn. It can hold 10,000 kids. After 9/11, actually, I had just graduated, but Stuyvesant was right next to the World Trade Center, and they had, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 kids, and they would kind of go and have the 5,000 Brooklyn Tech kids, and they'd kind of shift out from the morning, and then in the afternoon shift, the Stuyvesant kids would come, and it can kind of hold that. They had a little bit of overlap, but you're talking about 10,000 kids there. Over 9 floors of whatever. Anyway, it was a crazy place. It's a crazy place.
But it shows you, the kind of the inequities within the city, and
yeah.
By the way, Tarek, you don't know this, but Bo is a classmate of Erin Grace Clark.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right, because they all went to Brooklyn Tech. So the Preston, right?
Yes. Yep. They're friends from school.
Preston was a year ahead of me on the football team, so I got to throw a few passes to him or hand the ball off to him a few times, I was the quarterback and he was the running back.
So see it, small world. So Tarek, you developed the organization Active Plus because you saw a void within the city. I mean, something that I didn't grow up with and something that I've never seen before. Explain the challenges of being an executive and running this organization. I already know the stat that less than 1% of all nonprofits are run by people of color. You're part of that less than 1%. What are the challenges and what is it like being an executive?
Yeah, I always say, had I known it was going to be this much work, and this much sacrifice, I wouldn't have done this. I would not have chosen to start a nonprofit from scratch. However, I'm glad I did it because I'm made for this. But yeah, running starting any business is like one of the toughest things you can do. And then starting a nonprofit can be very difficult, right? Because, you're starting something, you're putting your money and resources into it. You're not necessarily going to get reimbursed, right? And so it's definitely been a stretch. And, New York City, even though it's a great city and there's a lot of funding that comes to the city, it's also very saturated with a lot of different charities, a lot of different services. So, we're competing against the big boys. And when it comes to sports and recreation and health and fitness, as we know, America doesn't, we don't provide too many resources for that. When it comes to health, mental health, physical education, America does not prioritize that. We're a very reactionary country. We're not very proactive when it comes to our health. We're one of the more unhealthiest nations in the world. So, finding sustainable funding that's going to last for years is a huge challenge. But, we've been definitely making our way, over the years. But you really have to be outside. You have to be meeting people. But it can be challenging in New York City just because New York City is just an expensive place. So things are double, triple the price compared to somewhere in the South, Florida, Texas, stuff like that, especially providing services to all these kids. It's the biggest school district in the United States of America. Most of the schools that are here, most public schools, they share one building, right? So it's 2 or 3 schools in one building. So it's just very saturated. It's a lot of kids, but just it means that we need more services. Kids need more access.
So when and I'm going to bring this in because I have a little insight here. When I joined the board, there wasn't more than like a few $1,000s in those coffers. So as part of your growth, can you tell the listeners how far you've grown this? Like what type of sponsors have you gone from when you started to where you are now? And then after you have that, we're going to talk about the state of youth in general, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, we're very grassroots, we're a very grassroots organization. We're in the community. I live in the community that we serve. And so when doing that, you just meet a lot of people along the way. And so we've worked with well over 50 different public schools in New York City. We're on a mayor's council, Mayor Adams. We work with now the New York City Housing Authority. We work with the Police Athletic League, the NYPD, Health and Human Services, the Department of Health, and the Violence Department. We're working with Gatorade, NBC Sports. We rang the bell, the New York Stock Exchange. We work with Liverpool Soccer Club Foundation. So the list goes on and on and on in regards to some of the partners and some of the other organizations that we've collaborated with over the years. And we're all in this together, trying to provide more resources. It's just that, New York City is a big city, and it just takes the community, to provide these services.
Let's span out a little bit. Let's look at the state of health with youth, just these young kids in general. These kids have been suffering through the pandemic, through more mental health issues at this age than I ever saw when I was growing up. I never had to worry about any of the stuff that these kids have ever dealt with. I never had to worry about any of it. What is the as we pan out, the biggest issue with children in general now? And as we bring it down, what are the biggest issues with the at-risk youth today?
Yeah, well, I think one of the bigger things is safety. Especially in New York City, like the parks aren't safe. So I know a lot of times people say, like, well, back in my day, we were all outside. In all honesty, if I had a kid, I don't know if I'll send them out to the playground by themselves. Especially with these communities that we're working in. We're a part of this initiative with the DEA, the NYPD, Nelson Mandela Foundation, and the First Responders Children Foundation, where we're opening up parks, basketball courts, and select New York City Housing Authority projects around the city. I think we opened up about 50 basketball courts. And so the role that Active Plus played is that, okay, we see that you're opening up these basketball playgrounds, but how is that going to be sustainable in regards to, kids being out and being able to play in a safe environment? And so Active Plus would come through, and we would provide programming, throughout the summer and these different projects around the city. But if you don't have a third party such as Active Plus to come through and provide those services, the parks are not safe. And it's hard for these kids to be active. It's hard to go outside and play. It's drugs, alcohol, it's glass on the floor, violence, stabbing, shootings, you name it. That's happening in the parks. The homeless situation, especially after the pandemic, has gotten a lot worse in New York City. So, a lot of the parks have been taken over by, homeless, So I think one of the biggest things has been safety. And I think that's something that is actually not as mentioned as much, outside of people just saying, oh, the kids love the phone, TikTok, Instagram. Like, yes, that's a part of it. But what are we doing as a society to help these kids out, to give them an alternative? It has to take more than just building a park and just keeping it there. We need to be able to provide services for these students, but a safe environment.
Oh, did you have a question? You're on mute. That's what I thought you wanted something. I'm sorry.
My dog is barking. That's why.
Oh.
So I don't know if we can hear her, but yeah, very dangerous dog, by the way. Very dangerous. I did want to ask though. I mean, coming back to some of this, I don't know if you have any updates on these statistics, but I know around 2010, I think it was from the census, the statistic that came out that I've used in some different lectures over the years is that this is the first generation of children in history to have a shorter life expectancy than the previous generation. That has never happened in human history, as we have all evolved over the last centuries. Many reasons going into that. I know we're kind of talking about two maybe slightly different concepts between safety and danger out there versus just overall fitness and health. And so the other part of that is just these constant programs all over the country because it's just no longer prioritized. That are programs getting cut all nationwide. So I'm just wondering if you have any statistics around that, or are we looking? I imagine we're even worse after COVID, and maybe 10, 15 years from when those statistics came out. But I think you're the person to ask that question to.
Yeah. So, according to the CDC, about 24% of children from the ages of 6 to 17 average about 60 minutes of physical activity. And look, doing the work that I do, and I haven't done it all around the country, but in regards to the public school system and middle class areas and low class areas, in regards to income, there's just not enough services. There's not enough resources. The schools are overwhelmed, right? So you're talking about a class has like 50 to 60 kids for one teacher. And it's a struggle to even find teachers and teacher aides. So we're just not giving the education to the students. And look, let's be honest, it's technology as well. Technology moves very, very, very fast, and we're just behind as a society. Parents are behind in regards to technology. Schools are behind in regards to technology. The government is behind in technology. I mean, the government is just laying down rules and laws for Facebook. Facebook's been out since when I was in college. That was like almost 20 years ago. So if the government and leadership can't keep up with technology, I don't really necessarily see any hope in regards to keeping up with students and what's going on their phones and what's going on their computers, because that's what they're doing. Young people don't even like to go to events. They don't like to show up to anything. They sit at home by themselves, and they just prefer to have relationships over the phone, over the internet. That's real. That's really what it is. That's what's happening. And then on top of that, you have the safety issues. You have the gender disparities, which we can talk about, later. We just have to pay more attention to it. The government's going to have to put more money into, into physical activity for youth, because it carries over into your adult years. And I'm sure, David and Bo, I'm sure you see it with some of the adults that you work with. If you weren't playing sports, if you weren't, into working out as a young person, it carries over into your later years. And so we're trying to stop that at the elementary age level, right? And so when we're working with elementary schools, we're there every recess. During the recess hour, we're coming through and we're giving them structured activities. We're introducing them to their body, introducing them to movement, but also for them to understand the importance of moving, and the importance of playing a sport outside of just running around aimlessly. And we do the same thing in middle school, right, with our phys ed programs and our after school programs, and in high school, with our strength and conditioning programs. So we're trying to nip that in the bud at a young age so they don't have to struggle as they get older.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that comes up to me in hearing you talk about the government piece is, I don't know what your experience was with the Michelle Obama initiative, the most, powerful woman maybe in America for 8 years. And it didn't seem to make much impact. I don't know if that was, political, whatever, red versus blue stuff, but she seemed to really try. It was great to see the effort she put forward, but it didn't seem to make much impact is where I guess my question becomes, are you seeing, at least with Eric Adams in New York City, you mentioned him being a supporter of your program. Is that something where there's a little bit more on the local level, or if you can call New York City even local? It's obviously its own country for anyone who's familiar with the breadth of the city. But yeah, I guess the question is you mentioned the governmental piece. So is there hope for that? I would say it was a little discouraging seeing Michelle Obama put all that effort forward, and again, seeing continued just worse and worse trends of overall health. And it's an uphill battle to fight. So I don't know if there's any great answer there. I'll throw one other thing at you real quick. I don't know if you've heard of the Ready State, Kelly Starrett and Juliet Starrett. Have you heard of those guys at all?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they had two things that comes up from them is one, they did a lot with stand-up kids, and they actually were trying to get desks out of schools, and they've done this at a few schools because sitting seems to be, counterintuitive to what children's energy levels are, and just, get them moving around, get them active in seems to have different effects there. So that was one of the pieces. But the other thing is I actually had them on my podcast, my other podcast, Bo Knows Health. And I kind of asked them a similar question with my frustration and fear for the future of America's healthcare. And they kind of brought it back to, and they just came out with a new book, Built to Move. And they talk about being the node in the community where, it sounds like that's what you're doing. So that's where I want to kind of bring it all back together. So, I think you're doing what you can from your perspective with the difficulty of having a nonprofit, but I guess, I know there wasn't a specific question in there, but
I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up in regards to Michelle Obama and stuff like that, and I remember, and I don't know if I can even look it up. I don't even know if she still does that whole initiative. But that was like a national campaign, but it wasn't necessarily bringing it into I feel like it ain't really had nothing to do with like the state government. Like it was a national thing. So maybe they supported some bigger nonprofits, right? Maybe they allocated some money to some foundations that could then support the local charities, things of that nature. But in regards to New York, it didn't make it to New York in regards to any sort of initiative. In regards to Mayor Adams, he's a big health junkie. I think he's like vegan. We believe at Access Plus that it's the mind, body, and soul. So it's hard to talk to our students about, throwing a ball around or running suicides if we're not addressing what's going on mentally with them, right? And so we also do yoga, mindfulness in our programs. And that's one thing that Mayor Adams has brought to New York City schools. It's mandated for them to do mindfulness every day, actually, in the beginning of the day. And then also, I know he's trying to do some big initiatives with the food, with the public schools. Not necessarily for them to go vegan, but
Well, I think he was proposing like a Meatless Monday type thing, or I think he was. I know there was some controversy there because I do work with a lot of kind of ancestral, primal, healthy farm type table to farm to table type folks, and they were pretty upset about this kind of continued agenda. Again, we're talking kind of different topics here, but the concept of kind of enforcing the lack of protein and I think the folks that get hit the hardest with that is the ones who don't have as much access. So to take away public school lunches and I was low income growing up, and I would go to I went to summer school just so I could get free lunches and work out, have access to a weight room in high school. So I would travel 2 hours each way because I got a free subway pass. But yeah, I lived all the way down to Coney Island. I would take my 2 hours there. But coming back to Mayor Adams, I do think that it's something I will throw out whenever I'm in the situation where I do think something like Meatless Mondays is actually very unfair to lower income folks who don't have access to as much protein, and to take that away to say that it's a bit of a it's definitely a triggering topic and a much bigger conversation. But that's something that does upset me in that regard.
So in regard,
no, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was saying, in regards to health and wellness, like the health and wellness initiatives by the mayor's office, I know those are the two of the bigger things that I've heard about. In regards to physical fitness, not so much, because I really feel like these schools are supposed to be offering phys ed, right? Like I think legally, every school, they're supposed to have phys ed teachers, you're supposed to have phys ed class. And so for the schools who do, right, which look, majority of the schools that we work with, they do have phys ed programs. but what does that phys ed program look like? What does it look like? You have the phys ed teacher, you have phys ed class, but a lot of times, space is limited. A lot of schools don't have gyms. They don't have necessarily a playground to go outside. So, some of the schools that we work in basements. Sometimes we have to go outside and, play out in the street, or go outside and try to find creative games out in the cement outside of the school. So, they're not necessarily getting the right physical education that you should have, coming up through a public school.
Yep.
So I would like to see more initiatives by the city government in regards to that.
Yeah, what I was going to say to you, being an insider, I know that Active Plus. Can you explain the characteristics of what is Active Plus pushing? Because usually when they come into the city school districts and stuff like that, they're looking for athletes. Active Plus deals with the 99%. Can you please explain the characteristics or the pillars of the program, of what we're pushing, of what's being pushed out, and the ultimate goal of it? It's to have a more well-rounded student. Can you explain that to the listener?
Yeah, of course. So, there's a lot of the programs that do exist. There are a lot of sport programs in New York City, but a lot of times they're just designed to find the athletes of the school, and it kind of leaves all the rest of the kids hanging. And so, the services and the programs that we provide, we want to make sure that everyone can be accepted into a program, right? So that the 99% of kids, to offer them these services, right? So offering them nutrition, cooking programming, offering them leadership activities, offering them sports, recreation, fitness, offering them more of the mental health education. So, we believe that's a very important focus of ours, and it's something that has been missing in these kids' lives for a very long time, or just been non-existent. A lot of fitness programs in New York are sport programs, which is great, and we need those programs. But we have to get back to the fundamentals of the importance of living a healthy lifestyle. And we believe that comes from understanding what it means to eat healthy, what it means to live a healthy life mentally, but also having that physical activity. So
you mentioned
Yep.
Oh, sorry. You mentioned that there's mindfulness that's required in the schools since Mayor Adams took in. What can you talk a little more about that required mindfulness?
Yeah. So look, school just started Thursday, and that's actually something that I've been working with some of the principals on to see what does that look like for their school. But I think it could be like mantras in the morning, like in home ed, first period class. I think it's different. I believe it should be different for each school, but it's addressing the classrooms in regards to like some sort of meditation. Now, I feel like it's very vague, and it's 1.2 million kids in the New York City public school programs. I don't know how much direction the mayor's office has given these schools. From the conversation I have with the principal, it doesn't seem like it's much direction outside. It's just mandated. So I don't necessarily know how they are going to track that. But we're definitely, we'll be consulting with a lot of these schools to help them, bring in these practices into their school, because we do believe it's important, because these kids are going through a lot. And I think it's good for them to address more of the mental health side of things. But these kids are also, they're better than we were when we were younger in regards to understanding the importance of like meditation and taking care of their mental. I think it's more popular now than what it once was, 15, 20 years ago. So, we're happy that they're actually acknowledging this, and they're acknowledging the individual, but we also have to see what type of support are they giving. Like, if you're going to bring that up, I feel like you're going to have to have some support as well. Because maybe if there is something going on with these kids, then what? Like, are we just saying it just to say it to look good, or are we actually going to, give these kids resources if they are going through, certain circumstances at home?
Yeah. On my other podcast, again, I'll mention I had a friend named David Bidler, and he has a nonprofit up in Maine called Physiology First, and they actually target high school kids. And they have a gym space where I think it's completely free to any of the high school kids, and they really focus. And he talks a lot about physiology first of breathing. So it is to me, breathing is the kind of easier way to get to meditation. When you start talking meditation, to me, even as a grown ass adult who's got a doctorate and I'm 15 minutes from Boulder here, which is crystals and all that kind of. Don't want to talk too negatively about Boulder. I'm loving my Buffs. Go Dion. Yeah,
that's right. You pull up that Buffalo thing. That's right.
Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, I'm on the bandwagon too.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, it's exciting times. But Physiology First, he talks about. He even says, we shouldn't be giving out a driver's license until we can teach these kids and show that they have a breathing capacity. Because again, when you're in those moments, taking a deep breath, a lot of us know this instinctively, but owning that concept, whether it's in athletics, whether it's in your general health, and 99% of non-elite athletics, I think there's a lot of power there. So it's something, I'll throw out. I also work with another company called Stasis on just teaching breathing concepts and what happens in the body. So that's something, I would love to see implemented just as much as the concept of mindfulness. And I don't think it's talked about enough in my area, being in this space.
No, I agree. Breathing is very, very important. I don't think I know how to breathe correctly in all honesty.
Well, let's do it. Are you up for the big test?
Yeah.
Give him the test. Go ahead.
Sit up nice and tall.
Sit up and tall. You ain't playing with you.
Put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Can we see your belly? Can we back you up a little so we can see your belly? All right, take a few deep breaths in and out.
Oh, Bo's gonna get
keep
on.
Breathing. Keep breathing. Keep breathing. Another deep breath. He's at least taking long exhales. That's good. Long exhale compared to a short inhale is a good thing. But you are breathing all the way up into your chest. Those are your backup muscles of breathing. If you can breathe into the belly, that's why I wanted to see the belly. For anyone listening, audio only on the podcast, you can check out the video. You failed the test. No, you're good. You can readjust your camera, but the thing I wanted to see there was you kind of called yourself out, so I thought I would jump on the concept. Good. But yeah, the idea there is if we can breathe into the belly. So as we take that big breath, I want to see that full expansion. I want to see the pregnancy belly. Yep, that's right, all the way out. And it's not sexy, but that ability to breathe out into the belly and expand the diaphragm is just that's the part where you actually start to massage your vagus nerve, take you from fight or flight, which, we know a lot of these kids are in day to day, down to rest and digest. And again, that breathing bit, there's a lot of ways you can kind of sneak into that better physiology, but without going too deep into that. But, sorry to call you out and put you on the spot like that, but.
No, not at all. I'm on the spot already, so it's all good. No, I think the breathing is important, and I'm glad we mentioned that because that's definitely something that we can talk about with some of with these schools. I think that's good for everybody because when are you really taught to breathe? You're not. So
yeah, and I would say there's two really basic ones that I would throw out to folks interested in this topic and anywhere around this space. And of course, one of our big themes from today, I'll throw it out now. We'll try to make sure we say it again at the wrap up. But if anyone wants to donate to Active Plus, the website is activeplus-nyc.org. Want to make sure I had that right. And there's an easy way to donate there. Tax write-offs, get it while they're hot. But what I was going to say, two different things for the breathing bit is box breathing. So you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, you hold that for 4 seconds. So you can keep doing that kind of really simple. And it's a good kind of group activity to do. So in those group environments, classes, I'm a huge fan of those. And I find people feel better at the end of that. And the other one is, just focusing on little longer inhale, quicker inhale, longer exhale, which is what you did in your kind of little test there on the spot. Okay. You were doing those longer exhales. So 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out, however you want to play with that. But any kind of version of that, something people could be doing right now as they're listening, focusing on that nasal breathing, all that kind of stuff. So that's my quick spiel on the soapbox.
No, but I think that's great, because I do believe that there's not enough focus on that anywhere. And I think with these kids, they need to learn how to calm themselves down, and breathing is the best way to do it. It's the easiest way to do it.
I have a question for you too.
This is our podcast. Yes, questions.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
podcast. Go ahead.
and it's talking about, with the youth and activity, and maybe you've mentioned this on a previous podcast. But if you're the mayor, right, of a city, what do you enforce, for schools in regards to kids when it comes to physical activity? Like, how can you enforce that, and what would you enforce? Like, what do you think is the bare minimum of what kids should be doing, and how would you track that?
I think kids should have gym every day, like I did when I grew up. They should have every day. There should be an hour of gym class, a period of gym that I think every kid should have to go through it. If you want to call it structured research, you call it whatever the heck you want. It should be part of their day. If we're looking for a well-rounded kid, that means in all aspects. And if they're just into their phone, there's sides of them that we're neglecting. And kids need to move. They're meant to move, and they're becoming way too sedentary. And from my perspective, the lack of having a gym class and being on the board and seeing what I've seen, these kids need gym. They need a class to run around. They need a class to learn these skills. Bo?
I'm gonna take it from a slightly different perspective and say utilize the physios, the physical therapists, and there's a bunch of different campaigns that we've had in the American Physical Therapy Association, and I am confident, having been a physical therapist in New York City, I volunteered a good amount of my time as well, because it was something I was very passionate about. I would go into schools and talk about PT as a career and things like that. But the physical fitness piece of it, I would say, again, if I was mayor, as to your hypothetical here, if you put out that call, again, physical therapists are one of the most altruistic professions, almost to a fault, where we don't get the branding and marketing that we need compared to, let's say, chiropractors. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But I would say utilize a system like that, where we could be assessing, whether it's once a year, and that's something also that, maybe it's once every 5 years or whatever it is, but everyone kind of has that physical assessment of, how close can you do a push-up? And having the gym class every day, I think the reason, unlike David, I live in the real world. Okay. And I know that there's budgets, and, I did the voice. I'm being a little facetious, but, my point is, I think that there's a lot of free resources. And again, if I was in New York City, I would volunteer a weekend a month easily to do 4 hours, to help with a project like that. And I'm confident, knowing a lot of other great physical therapists. I'm just saying physical therapists because that's the world I come from and I know. But I think that there's a lot of great resources like that. So, and I think that's an actionable thing that, honestly, at the end of this call, I can get you 5 to 30 to 100 physical therapists.
Yes.
That would give, that time to Active Plus. And if you can get those kids to sign up for free screenings of, for female athletes, if they're even semi-active, the statistic is, I think around the country, 42% of female high school athletes, girls in soccer, tear their ACLs. That's a huge cost to the healthcare system. That's a huge cost to their emotional, physical, career, all that kind of stuff. They're probably not going to be quite as competitive and recover the way a Breece Hall is going to show you tonight, David. He's going for 2 touchdowns tonight. I'm calling it right now. Anyway, but that would be my concept of take advantage of those resources. I do think that, having been in the space for a long time, there's a lot of wasted resources. There are a lot of wasted efforts. There's a lot of things that don't quite get off the ground. And I can see like these different diverging paths. And I wish that there were better opportunities for, again, when I was there, I volunteered. I have my shirt right here. Actually, I happen to have it on the ground. I was wearing it yesterday. I volunteered at the New York City finish line just to be a medical provider, just to do something and be involved with these active people and be part of something very cool. And I think that could be something where, you know, you're going to see these conversations. You're going to educate the kids. As I'm talking about it, as you phrase that question, I love it, man. I have my juices flowing. I wish that I could be there in New York City. I think here in Boulder, you know, Boulder and Denver, Colorado in general, that's one of the most active places in the world, to my knowledge. And it's pretty incredible to see. And I'd love to have a little more conversation on that. I know we're going to be a little limited on time today, but to see, again, there's a lot more wealth. There's a lot more, you know, different socioeconomic things. But anyway, that would be my thing. Take advantage of kind of orthopedic screenings to say, hey, you know, you're likely to tear your ACL just because of the way you're jumping. And it's very quick fix to say, hey, 100%. Don't let your knees collapse when you jump and land like that. And you're going to see ACLs kind of, those rates improve dramatically. So there's stuff like that where it's low hanging fruit. What can we all agree on? And let's get that out there and figure out a way to get that out to the kids. So yeah.
Yeah. And and since I'm board chair, I'm going to hold you to that when we see what we can do and get some PTs. Maybe we can get you, as you know, we got bibs for the marathon this year. So we have five runners, right? Six?
Yeah. Six. So we're a partner of the New York Road Runners and the TCS New York City Marathon for 2023, which we're super excited, you know, for this upcoming race. So we actually have 6 runners that's fundraising for Active Plus. And the marathon will be on Sunday, November 5th. And then after that, we'll do the half marathon. So definitely, you know, time is clicking away. So we're super excited for the marathon. And now, in regards to that question, kind of following up what you all are saying, do you feel like health and nutrition is hand in hand with like physical activity? So like when you all work with your clients, you know, within your world, is that when you're working with them physically, do you discuss nutrition, health? Like, do you feel like that's hand in hand, or do you think that's separate?
Before I start this, Bo and I run our business a little bit differently. Bo is more complete in how he does his. Okay. I farm some things out to
I'm a nutrition coach as well, so yeah. I'm a little biased on that answer. But yeah, to I'll just jump ahead and say 100%. And I think David still, even though he doesn't necessarily go that deep into the coaching side of it, but we've had RDs on here, and I know he refers out. But I think that it's one of the first things we talk about with my clients with hydration. I work with LMNT. For electrolytes, because again, if people are going to be active, we need to figure out how to do that. We do blood work. I'm going all the way deep on all that stuff, and yeah, there's definitely costs associated with that. But I think it's impossible to, you know, not impossible, I shouldn't say, because again, when we're talking about that concept, one of the other answers I'll give to your previous question is, you know, get 10 burpees a day. And I know Corona loves burpees, but like have every kid, like, you know, whatever. I think we had to do the Pledge of Allegiance every day.
Yeah,
I think
we did.
I think.
Yeah, I did.
I don't know if that's still happening. Is that still happening?
No,
I didn't think so. But yeah, like have that kind of home ed, you know, kind of thing where, yeah, whatever it is, whatever that challenge is for the day, let's all do 10 squats before we talk about whatever we got to talk about, you know, just that little extra bit. And it drops in the importance of that concept. And, you know, that's how I have to work with a lot of my adults. Like, hey, I'm a busy dude. If I can get 10 minutes a day, I'm happy to get a workout in these days with my 11-month-old. So yeah, anyway, I'll, you know, I wanted to throw that in there from the previous question and to talk about this question. Yeah, I think that nutrition is paramount. And the mindfulness. I have the 5 pillars of health that I talk about with all my clients. Connection is another one that gets missed. And you mentioned, you know, how the youth are just stuck in their phones and building relationships that way. But that's something we've talked about on previous episodes here of that connection is, you know, a huge component in person and true, useful, like real connections where, you know, if we lose a loved one, who do we have to call that we can, you know, hey, Corona, like I'm going through a tough time. I'm going to call you up and we're going to talk and he's going to be there for me. Or if we're in person, let's go grab a drink or whatever that is. Not that that's a healthy behavior. We shouldn't be grabbing drinks. We don't want to promote that. Go ahead.
I'm going to say this. We sat with Professor Lerner from NYU, who basically talked to us about being able to be with each other and touch each other and to hug each other and to have those moments are very, very much intertwining and bring us closer as a whole. There aren't really real relationships for these kids online. They may think they have real relationships, but they don't. And we also have the issue right now, which I will just touch on, Men don't really talk to men, or men, boys don't talk to boys. And they open up the doors for that so that they can have meaningful relationships also. That's also another issue that's out there. But there's got to be spots where we can have these conversations. Online, I don't think that's, for me, and from my opinion, I don't think that's where we find the best of the best and get the best out of these kids or get the best out of each other as adults.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, listen, man. Before we break out, give something to the listener to walk away from that they should know about the youth and health. In other words, name something. If you got a kid out there, name something that you feel that these kids should be doing now that they're not doing, or something that you can give them to walk away with so that they can go somewhere. You can give them the website and they can go on to the workouts of Active Plus, of course. But I'm just saying to name something that you would give them so the listener can walk away and help their family or help their child with something.
No, I think we can't fight technology. We have to embrace technology. And the one thing that we learned as an organization, because you have to learn, right, when you're working with people. We actually had more of our kids active during the pandemic than when we're actually in the schools. A lot of our kids felt that doing activity in front of people, they were embarrassed to do it, and they preferred to do it on their own time in a private setting. And they actually engaged more with us. And even to this day, they engage more with us virtually than they do in person, especially for like the non-athletes, the people who might not, students who might not necessarily like to be active. And so I would say to parents and to teachers out there watching this, use technology, engage your students virtually. You will be surprised of the response that you'll get. We definitely, to this day, we've had better statistics in regards to our students being active virtually than in person. I would have never had guessed that. That our student would do more activity in a crowded apartment in Harlem than in a gym, in front of 40 people. But that's me being an athlete. If you're not necessarily an athlete, you might not feel so comfortable doing those sort of things in front of people. So that was definitely something that I learned a lot from, that I think a lot of teachers and parents can learn from. Embrace technology. There's a lot of free applications out here. You have YouTube. Like, you have so much more information than we did when we were kids.
Bo, you got anything to put a bow on this?
I did want to shout back to fact check sort of the Let's Move website, which was Michelle Obama's initiative, is no longer active. It actually stopped being active as soon as President Obama left office in January 2017. It looks like that was no longer a funded initiative, and that website is still up. There's still resources there. Not all the links apparently work, but I did want to throw that back to complete that concept. But I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's so many different facets there. One other thought I'll throw out there: I just actually signed up for the Boulder Half Ironman 70.3 triathlon. So
wow.
if we're talking about if we're talking about fundraising, I'd love to again find a way similar to how you were talking about for the New York City Marathon. I don't know if that makes sense, but if that's something I can do to support you guys, I'd love to see if that makes some sense. But other than that, I'll throw that ring down. And if we do talk about getting some physical therapists involved, whatever those opportunities are, I'd love to. I know there's going to be a few that listen to this. I have my network of folks on my socials here, hopefully hear that and think, that they want to jump in, or they have some different ideas. I'd love for them to jump in, contact me, contact these guys. Let's get things going.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's why I asked the question, because we actually have the mayor's office ear. So, these type of suggestions are always good.
Yeah. So listen, man, I just I want people to remember that things will get better if we all jump in together and do this, and work together in solving a solution when it comes to this. It's pretty simple. You got to get our kids moving. Our kids are the next future generation of leaders in this country. Let's get them moving. Let's keep them healthy. Let's keep them healthier than us. With that being said, well, that's it for this episode of the Demand Better podcast. We hope you enjoyed your conversation with Tariq Kitson. He's a wealth of knowledge and experience, and we learned a lot today. If you're interested in donating or learning more about Tariq or Active Plus, you can find more information on their website. Bo, that is
activeplus-nyc.org.
or in our show links. And don't forget to subscribe to the Demand Better podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Help us by spreading the word of the Demand Better podcast by writing a review, liking, sharing, or subscribing to the show. Your engagement means the world to us and help us reach more individuals who are seeking to demand better in their lives. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Keep demanding better.
Peace.